forever. Verse 13, and Abram married Sarah with pomp, as observed at the interment of a Malachim, like a queen, princess. And she was married in very fine and beautiful garments. And that her bearer was Shem and his sons ever. Abimelech, together with Anar, Ashkol, Mamre, and all the nobles of the land followed. So even Shem was there. Verse 15, and the Yamim of Sarah were 127 years. She died, and Abram made a great heavy mourning, and he performed the rites of mourning for 7 Yamim. Verse 16, and all the inhabitants of the land comforted Abram and Ishak, his son, on account of Sarah. Now Ishak goes to school with Shem, Noah's son. And when the Yamim of their mourning were over, Abram sent away his son Ishak, and he went to the house of Shem ever to learn the halakot of Yahuwah and his Torah. And Abraham remained there 3 years. So he went to be schooled by Shem and Ever, just like Abraham did. All right, and he stayed there for 3 years, and Abraham left him there for 3 years. Actually, stayed with him. Like, it looks like he stayed with him for a while, but in Better Sheet, it's got a different little kind of story, which we're going to see continue in verse 18. So he went through all the trials and testings, lost his mother. It's time to go to school and grow up to be a Hanavi himself, to be a prince himself, and a man of his own standing, upright. Right, verse 18. At that time, Abram rose up with all his servants, and they went and returned homeward to Beersheba. And Abram and all his servants remained Beersheba. And at the turn of the year, Abimelech of the Philistines died in that year. He was 193 years old at his death. And Abram went with his people to the land of the Philistines, and they confronted the whole household and all his servants. And he then turned and went home. And it was after the death of Abimelech that the people of Gerar took Ben Malik, his son of the sovereign, Malik, Ben Malik, son of the Sar, his son, and he was only 20 years old, and they made him stay in the place of his Abba. So he became a sovereign, and they called his name. That's from then on, you'll see all the way to the time of David. This name exists. Abimelech, father, sovereign. We're going to say the word king because that's a King James word. That's a European word. King comes from ing. King is a word of a surname of a certain race of people, of the blue blood of those people over there in Europe. It's another tape, another video, another time. All right, I'm not going to get it. But Avimelech, son of the sovereign, after the name of his Abba. And from this was their custom to do in Gerar. And Abimelech reigned instead of Abimelech, his Abba, and he sat upon his throne. It's like a pharaoh. They take that different position, or like a president. They have their own name, but they call him Mr. President. Verse 22, and the lot of the son of Hiron also died in those Yamim in the 39th year of the high of Ishak. And all the Yamim that Lot lived were 140 years, and he died. So now Lot, 140 years, right? And he dies now, okay? And these are the children of Lot that were born to him of his daughters. The name of the Becher was Moab, and the name of the second was Ben-Ami. Verse 24, and the two sons of Lot went and took themselves wives from the land of Canaan. Now these are the two sons that were born through his daughters, okay? And they bore children to them. And the children of Moab were Ed, Maon, Tarsus, and Canvel. 4 sons. These are Avon to the children of Moab to this yoke. And all the families of the children of Lot went to dwell wherever they did go, for they were fruitful and increased abundantly. And they went and built themselves cities in the land where they dwelt, and they called the names of the cities that they built after their own names. And Nachor, the son of Terach, brother to Abraham, died in those Yamim, in the 40th year of the height of Ishak. And all the Yamim of Nakar were 172 years, and he died and was buried in Haran. And when Abraham heard that his brother was dead, he grieved sadly, and he mourned over his brother many Yamim. And Abram called for Eliezer, his head servant, to give him orders concerning his house. And he came and stood before him. And Abram said to him, Behold, I am old, I do not know the yom of my death, for I am advanced in Yamim. Bereshit 24, verse 1. Now therefore rise up, go forth, and do not take a wife for my son from this place, for this land, and from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom we dwell. But go to my land and to my birthplace, and take from there a wife for my son. And Yahuwah Eloah of Hashemayim and earth, who took me from my Abba's house and brought me to this place, and said to me, to your seed will I give this land for inheritance, li olam ve'ad. He will send his malach before you and prosper you your way, that you may obtain a wife for my son from my family and from my Abba's house. And the servant answered his master Abraham and said, Behold, I go to your birthplace and to your Abba's house, and take a wife for your son from there. But if the woman be not willing to follow me to this land, shall I take your son back to the land of your birthplace? And Abram said to him, Take heed that you bring not my son here again. For Yahuwah, before whom I have my halakha, right way, he will send his malach before you and prosper your way. He will send his messenger ahead of you. Verse 34, and Eliezer did as Abraham ordered him, and Eliezer swore to Abraham his master upon this matter. And Eliezer rose up and took 10 camels of the camels of his master, and 10 men from his master's servants with him. And they rose up and went to Haran, the city of Abraham and Nakar, in order to fetch a wife for Ishak, the son of Abram. While they were gone, Abraham sent to the house of Shem and Eber, and they brought forth there his son Ishak. So while he went to journey to go to his Sarah's family and to the family's household to find a cousin wife, okay, he went back to Shem Ever and picked up his son, told his son, come on, I'm getting ready to, he's speeding up his education real quick. Okay. Verse 35, and Ishak came home to his Abba's house in Beersheba, while Eliezer and his men came to Geram, and they stopped in the city by the watering place. And he made his camels to kneel down by the Ma'im, and they remained there. Verse 36 is found also in Bereshit, Genesis 24, verse 12. And Eliezer, Abraham's servant, prayed and said, O Aloha of Abraham, my master, send me, I beg you, tov speed this yom, and show ches to my master, that you shall appoint this yom a wife for my master's son from his family. 37. And you will hearken to the voice of Eliezer for the sake of his servant Abraham. And he happened to meet with the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nakor, brother of Abraham. And Eliezer came to her house. And Eliezer related to them all his concerns, and he was Abraham's servant. And they greatly celebrated at him. And they all baruched Rebekah Yahuwah, who brought this thing about. And they gave him Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, for a wife for Ishak. Now, there's more details of that prayer and the watering and the details and the bracelets and the bond, the brother and his covetousness and all the things were in Bereshit more than here. Here it went right to the point, okay? And she was 10 years old then, which you're going to see here, right? And it says here they gave Rebekah, but no, you see in Bereshit the parallel understanding of the fullness of the story. The daughter of Bethuel for a wife for Ishak. And the young woman was of very comely appearance. She was a virgin, and Rebekah was 10 years old in those yamim. Now remember, she don't have children, she's 25. Keep that in mind. And she doesn't go into Ishak's tent. She goes into Sarah's tent when they get their home. Verse 41, Bethel and Laban and his children made a feast that yom. And Eliezer and his men came and ate, drank, and celebrated there on that night. 42, Eliezer rose up in the morning, he and the men, and they were with him. And he called to the whole household of Bethel, saying, send me away, that I may go to my master. And they rose up and sent away Rebekah and her nurse, Deborah, and the daughter of Uz. Now, they rose up and sent away Rebekah and her nurse, Deborah, the daughter of Uz. So they tell you who she is. The nurse is a nanny, which I explained in another video in the last Bereshit that I did concerning this last month Bereshit, okay, a few weeks ago. That she was a nurse, not a maidservant or a girlfriend servant that grew up with her. She's a nurse. When you look it up in Hebrew, she is a woman that even breastfeed Rebekah growing up. So she nursed her and grew up with her. She's a nanny. That's who she is. And she's Deborah, the daughter of Uz, so you know her name now. And they gave her silver and gold, men servants, maid servants, and they berekot her. Right? And they sent Eliezer away with his men, and the servants took Rebekah, and he went and returned to his master to the land of Canaan. Verse 44, and Ishak took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he brought her into the tent. It doesn't say his tent, it says into the tent. In Bereshit, it says she went into Sarah's tent. She inherited everything from Sarah. She took on everything, all right, of Sarah, entered her tent. And the nurse stayed with her and raised her and taught her and prepared her for engagement of being betrothed for marriage to Ishak, because she was only 10 years old, and Ishak was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of his uncle Bethuel, for a wife. So, but he wouldn't have sex with her or be with her personal or intimately. She's too young. And she went into Sarah's tent, and she inherited that tent, right? And then with her nurse, Deborah, and from there they raised her up and prepared her to be a bride in due time to go into Ishak's tent. Now, Ishak will always stay in his tent. And as the other women, as they grow up, the man has his man cave, and he goes to his wife's tent for when he be with his wife, stay there or whatever. But when he wants to go to the man cave, he goes to the man cave. That's the way they did it back then, okay? There's like a big giant tent with different rooms, but he had a separate tent. Chapter 25, verse 1. And it was at that time that Abraham again took a wife in his old age, and her name was Keturah, from the land of Canaan. And this is Bereshit, Genesis 25, 1 through 6. And she bore to him Zimran, Yokshan, Middan, Midian, Ishbak, Shuach, being 6 sons. And the children of Zimran were, and the names of who they are, Avihan, Molech, and Narim. And the sons of Yokshan were Sheba and Dedan. And the sons of Midan were Amidah, Yaob, Kochi, Elisha, and Nothak. And the sons of Midian were Ephah, Eper, Hanok, Avidah, and Elidah. So these are the names of the sons of Ishak, and all the sons, and Ketah, the Canaanite woman that she bore to Abram, the Ibri. 6, verse 6. Kind of skipped a little because of the names. And Abram sent all these away, and he gave them gifts, and they went away from his son Ishak to dwell wherever they should find a place. And all these went to the mountains of the east, and they built themselves 6 cities in which they dwelt this yom. Now, that's the population around the area of Abraham. Did they prosper? Oh, yes, they did. They had the Rebekah of Abraham still. Okay? But the first the firstborn, right, of the Rebekah went to Ishak. And all these went to the mountains of the east. Verse 8. And the children of Sheba and Dedan, children of Yokshan, with their children, did not dwell with their borders in their cities. And they journeyed and encamped in the countries and the wilderness to this yom. So they're like nomadic, or they're Bedouins. And the children of Midian, son of Abraham, went to the east of the land of Cush, and they there found a large valley in the eastern country, and they remained there and built a city, and they dwelt therein. And this is the land of Midian till this yom. And the Midianites dwelt in the city that he built, he and his 5 sons, and all belonging to him. And all these are the names of the sons of Midian, according to their names in their cities: Ephah, Ephar, Hanuk, Avidah, and Eldah. And the sons were Mithal, Mashar, Avi, Zanu, the sons of Ephah. Verse 14. These are the generations of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, whom Hagar, Sarah's handmaid, bore to Abram. And Ishmael took a wife from the land of Mizraim, and her name was Reva. The same is Mereva. Now this is found in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 25, verse 12 through 17. It names all their sons, and it says in verse 16, and Reva bore to Ishmael Nevayoth, Kedar, Avel, Mizam, and their sister Boshmath. And Ishmael cast away his wife Reva, and she went from him and returned to Mizraim, to the house of her Abba, and she dwelt there, for she had been very bad in the sight of Ishmael, in the sight of his Abba Abraham. And Ishmael after took a wife from the land of Canaan, and her name was Makut, and she bore to him Mishma, Duma, Masa, Kadan, Tema, Yatar, Naish, Kidma. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names, being 12 princes, according to their nations. So he had his 12 tribes plus more, all right? He had his 12 principalities, 12 tribes as well. He's received that portion of the Rebekah, is said from the beginning of his birth. And the families of Ishmael afterwards spread forth, and Ishmael took his children and all their property and that he had gained, together with the beings of his household, and all belonging to him, and they went to dwell where they should find a place. And they went and dwelt near the wilderness of Paran, and their dwelling was the Havilah to Shur, and that is before Mizraim as you come toward Asher. Now, they didn't go to Aruba. He didn't go to the other side of Ammon, Jordan. He didn't go to those areas, right? His 12 sons. I checked when I did the genealogy, checking historical books. Out of the 12, there's a possibility 2 or 3 lingered and nomadically ended up over there. But most of Ishmael's household were Mizraim, from the areas of that part of Africa and Egypt, okay? And Ishmael and his sons dwelt in the land, and they had children born to them, and they were fruitful and increased abundantly. These are the names of the sons of Nevoah. So he's got the names of all their sons as well here. Verse 27, skip all the genealogy of the names. All these are the families of Ishmael, according to their generations, and they dwelt in those lands wherein they had built themselves cities to this yom. Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the wife of Abraham's son Ishak, was barren in those yamim. She had no offspring, and Ishak dwelt with his Abba in the land of Canaan. And Yahuwah was with Ishak. Arpachshad, the son of Shem, the son of Noah, died in those yamim. So the son of Shem, the son of Noah, died in those yamim, in the 48th year of the high of Ishak. And all the yamim of Arpachshad lived were 438 years, and he died. So From Peleg, most of the people died at 200. This guy lived. These are the remainders of the ones that are on the boat, the sons on the boat of Noah. And everybody after Peleg, all right, split in half under 2 years, 200 years and under. Okay. Chapter 26, in the 59th year of the height of Ishak, the son of Abraham, Rebekah, his wife, was still barren in those yamim. And Rebekah said to Ishak, truly I have heard, my master, that your Emma Sarah was barren in her yamim, until my master Abraham, your Abba, prayed for her, and she conceived by him. So she knew the story, how he prayed when Abimelech, and he prayed for all the barren wombs, and she was healed. So now, that confirms the witness in Bereshit of the scriptures, of the detail, also in the beginning of the story of Abraham. This confirms the understanding that she was healed from the prayer of Abraham when he prayed for all the barren women under Abimelech's of the Philistines area. Okay? Now therefore stand up, pray you also to Allah, and he will hear your prayer, and remember us through his compassion and pity. And Ishak said, okay, answered his wife Rebekah, saying, Abraham has already prayed for me to Elohim to multiply his seed. Now therefore this barrenness must recede to us from you. So he's blaming her, she's blaming him. It's going back and forth, but she wants him to pray. Now, Bereshit, Genesis 25, verses 20 through 22. And Rebekah said to him, but arise now you also and pray. Don't just chill out, not pray. I'm asking you to pray. He wasn't going to pray. He said, I have the promises. I'm going to have a multiple seed. And he had to pray for it. So, Rebekah in verse 5, said to him, but arise now you also pray, that Yahuwah may hear your prayer and grant me children. And Ishak hearkened. Man, she had to argue for a prayer. This guy is something else. To the words of his wife, and Ishak and his wife rose up and went to the land of Moriah. They said Moriah, to pray there and to seek Yahuwah. And when they had reached that place, Ishak stood up and prayed to Yahuwah on account of his wife, because she was barren. So they went to the place of the first experience, love, the place of his sacrifice, the place of his experience. And Ishak said, O Yahuwah, Eloah of the Shemaim and Aretz, whose goodness and compassion fill the earth, you who did take my Abba from his Abba's house and from his birthplace, and did bring him to this land, and did say to him, to your seed will I give the land, and you did promise him, and did declare to him, I will multiply your seed as the kokavim of the Shamaim, and as the sand of the sea. Now may your words be verified, which you did speak to my Abba. For you are Yahuwah, our Eloah. Our eyes are toward you to give us seed of men, as you did promise us. For you are Yahuwah, our Eloah, and our eyes are directed toward you only. And Yahuwah heard the prayer of Ishak, the son of Abraham, and Yahuwah was entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. So this is an awesome prayer. He lifted up the promise. He went to the place of the first sacrifice, the first love. He lifted up the prayer. He interceded. He lifted up the promises with emunah, and Abba heard his prayer. He could have did it all the time, but it took his wife to say, hey, let's go up there and pray, man. Verse 9, and about 7 months after the children struggled together within her, and it pained her greatly that she was wearied on account of them. And she said to all the women who were then in the land, did such a thing happen to you as it was to me? And they said to her, no. And she said to them, why am I alone in this among all the women that were upon the earth? Aretz. And she went to the land of Moriah to seek Yahuwah on account of this. And she went to Shem and Eber, his son, to make inquiries of them in this matter, and that they should seek Yahuwah in this thing respecting her. So, it's like Shem and Eber, the grandson and son of Noah, were like a Hanavis, men of Yahuwah, elders. They're their elders. They're spiritual elders. And Abraham's still alive during this time. Okay? Verse 11, she also asked Abram to seek and inquire of Yahuwah about all that had befallen her. And they all inquired of Yahuwah concerning this matter. And they brought her a word from Yahuwah and told her, 2 children are in your womb, and 2 nations shall rise from them. And one nation shall be stronger than the other, and the greater shall serve the younger. And when her yamim to be delivered were completed, she knelt down, and behold, there were twins in her womb, as Yahuwah had spoken to her. And the first one came out red all over like a hairy garment. And all the people of the land called his name Esau, saying that this one was made complete from the womb. Verse 15, and after that came his brother, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. Therefore they called his name Yaacob. It is found in Bereshit 25:26. And Ishak, the son of Abraham, was 60 years old when he begot them. So he's 60 now. All right. Verse 17. And the boys grew up to their 15th year, and they came among the society of men. Esau was the designing and deceitful man, an expert hunting in field. And Yaacob was a man perfect in mind up, dwelling in tents, feeding flocks, learning the Torah of Yahuwah and the commands of his Abba and Emma. And Ishak and the children of his household dwelt with his Abba Abraham in the land of Canaan, and as Elohim had commanded them. And Ishmael, the son of Abraham, went with his children and all belonging to them. And they returned there to the land of Havilah, and they dwelt there. And all the children of Abraham, concubines, went to dwell in the land of the east, for Abraham had sent them away from his son and had given them presents, and they went away. Found in Bereshit, Genesis 25:1-6. And Abram gave all that he had to his sons, Ishak. And he also gave him all his treasures. And he commanded him, saying, do you not know and understand Yahuwah is Aloha in the Shamaim and Eretz, and there is no other beside him. And it was he who took me from my Abba's house and from my birthplace, and gave me all the delights upon Eretz, who delivered me from the counsel of the wicked. For in him did I trust, and he brought me to this place, and he delivered me from of the Chaldean. And he said to me, to your seed I will give all these lands, and they shall inherit them when they keep my mitzvot, my hukim, and my mishpatim that I have commanded you, and which I shall command you. Now therefore, my son, listen to my voice, and keep my mitzvot of Yahuwah your Elohim, which I commanded you. Do not turn from the right halakha ways, either to the right or to the left, in order that it may be well with you and your children after you, li olam va'ad. Verse 26, and remember the wonderful works of Yahuwah and his chest that he has shown toward us in having delivered us from the hands of our enemies. And Yahuwah our Eloha caused them to fall into our hands. Now therefore keep all that I have commanded you, and turn not away from the mitzvot of your Eloha, and serve none beside him, in order that it may be well with you and your seed after you. And teach your children and your seed the Torah of Yahuwah and his mitzvot, and teach them the upright halakot in which they should go, in order that it may be well with them, li olam va'ad. You hear that? So he's giving them instructions to follow the Torah, the same Torah and all the right rules and mitzvot understanding of Torah that came from Noah, the Shem, Abraham, and him. So he's telling them, Abraham to Ishak, to keep this tradition and keep the right rule. Verse 28, Ishak answered his Abba and said to him, that which my master has commanded, that will I do. and I will not depart from mitzvot of Yahuwah, my Aloha. I will keep all that he commanded me. He's saying mine, not yours, but mine. And Abraham Baruch his son Ishak, and all his children. And Abram taught Yaacob the Torah of Yahuwah and his halakot. Verse 29. And it was at that time that Abraham died. He was 175 years old. In the 15th year, the high of Yaacob and Esau, the son of Ishak, the sons of Ishak. And all the Yamim of Abraham were 175 years, and he died, and was gathered to his people in Tov old age, old and satisfied with Yamim. And Ishak and Ishmael his sons buried him. And when the inhabitants of Canaan heard that Abraham was dead, they all came with their Malakim and princesses, with all their sovereigns, and all their men to bury Abraham, and all the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, and all the families of the house of Abraham, and all the princes of nobles of the sons of Abraham by their concubines, all came when they heard of Abraham's death, and they repaid Abraham's chest, his love, compassion, and pity, and comforted Ishak, his son, and they buried Abraham in the cave which he bought from Abram the Hittite, and his, which Machpelah, children, for the possession of the burial place. And all the inhabitants of Canaan and all those who had known Abraham wept for Abraham a whole year, and men and women mourned over him, and all the children of and verse 33, and all the little children and all the inhabitants of the land wept on account of Abraham. For Abraham had been tov to them all, and because he had been upright with Aloha and men. And there arose not a man who revered Elohim like Abraham. For he had revered his Aloha from his youth, and had served Yahuwah, and had gone in all his halakot during his high, from his childhood to the yom of his death. Verse 35, and Yahuwah was with him, and delivered him from the counsel of Nimrod and his people, and when he had made war with the 4 Malakim of Elam, he conquered them, and he brought all the children of the earth to service of Elohim. And he taught them the halakot of Yahuwah, and he caused them to know Yahuwah. So, people passed his path. He had that grove or orchard of food and vegetables. They ate. He taught them Torah, and they went on the journey, fed them, clothed them, sent them off. You see, so he was a missionary. He was more than an evangelist, right? He would house them and everything to minister to them, give them the word and send them on the way with the word of the right rule. It's up to them to live it. And all these people came to give the respect and just and love and respect. And he formed a grove, and he planted a vineyard therein. And he had always prepared in his tent meat and drink to those that passed through the land, that they might satisfy themselves in his house. And Yahuwah Aloha delivered the whole earth on account of Abraham. You hear that? And Yahuwah Aloha delivered the whole earth on account of Abraham. Verse 39, and it was after the death of Abraham that Aloha Rebekah, his son Ishak, and his children, and Yahuwah was with Ishak as he had been with his Abba Abraham. And Ishak kept all the misfort of Yahuwah as Abraham his Abba and commanded him. He did not turn to the right or to the left from the right path which his Abba had commanded. Now, this concludes the whole story. Chapters 26 of Sefer Yasher ends from birth to the death and burial of Abraham. He was buried in the cave of Machpelah, right? And everybody's going to get buried out there after Abraham, Ishak, Yaacob, and their wives, except Rachel, which is buried in Rachel's tomb by Bethlehem. All right, I'm going to read this little portion, even though this ends the story, because this is not found in Bereshit, but I'm going to read this little portion for you. All right, and in chapter 27, verse 1. And Esau at that time, after the death of Abram, frequently went into the field to hunt. And Nimrod, Melech of Babel, Nimrod of Babylon, the same was Amraphel. They called him Amraphel after the Tower of Babel fell. They changed his name. And also frequently went with his mighty men to hunt in the field, and to walk about with his men in the cool of the Yom. And Nimrod was observing Esau all the Yamim, for a jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau all the Yamim. Well, because he was a great hunter. Esau was a great hunter by the gift of being the son of Abraham, but he was not, hear that? He didn't have the skins like Nimrod. Nimrod had the skins, so he had a little edge, the skins of Adam and Hawa, that he stole from his Abba, all right, of Noah, his grandfather. And so he used those skins as a power tool, spiritual power over the animals in order to subdue them. And in verse 4, and on a certain Yom, Esau went into the field to hunt, and he found Nimrod walking in the wilderness with his 2 men. And all his mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness, but they removed at a distance from him, and they went from him in different directions to hunt. And Esau concealed himself from Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. So he was kind of checking him out, like one hunter to another hunter, but they're staying away from each other's hunt territory, but they're having jealousy and envy with each other. Okay? And Esau knew who he was. He knew who the guy was. You know the whole stories of Nimrod and what he did to his Abba. All right? He knows all the stories. He wasn't no illiterate guy, right? Abraham, everybody under Abraham knew how to read and write and knew Torah. Even though Esau wasn't as educated in Torah like Ishak, he was still educated. Verse 6. And Nimrod and his men that were with him did not know him. And Nimrod and his men frequently walked about in the field. And so they didn't know he was the son of Abraham. And Nimrod and his men, but Esau knew. Esau knew all about Nimrod. He was educated by his Abba. Okay? But Nimrod did not know him. Frequently walked about in the field at the cool of the Yom to know where his men were hunting in the field. And Nimrod and 2 of his men that were with him came to the place where they were. When Esau started suddenly from his lurking place, drew his sword, and hurried and ran to Nimrod and cut off his head. Now look at this. Nimrod and his 2 of his men that were with him came to the place where they were. When Esau started suddenly from his lurking place, drew his sword, and hurried and ran to Nimrod and cut off his head. You got that? Because Nimrod was kind of lurking. Esau was out there hunting in that area. Nimrod claimed the territory, basically. He says, well, he's jealous of his hunting, so I'm going to kick him out. I'm going to hunt him. But Esau managed to out-hunt him and make a circle of some form. And he come out of his lurking place and took Nimrod's head off. And Esau fought a desperate fight with the 2 men that were with Nimrod. And when they called out to him, Esau turned to them and smote them to death with his sword. So he killed Nimrod, and he killed the 2 of his mighty men, warriors with Nimrod, Esau. And all the mighty men of Nimrod, who had left him go to the wilderness, heard the cry at a distance, and they knew the voices of those 2 men. So, you know, all his bodyguard, 150, whatever horses, you can't go in the woods to hunt. That just chases the game away. So the bulk of the people had to be at a certain place, and Nimrod and his 2 chosen men went to lurk for the hunt in the forest or the field. Okay, so all the others were at a distance. Okay, and when Esau saw the mighty men of Nimrod, okay, wait a minute. And they ran to know the cause of it. When they found their Melech and the 2 men that were with him lying dead in the wilderness, when Esau saw the mighty men of Nimrod coming at a distance, he fled and thereby escaped. And Esau took the valuable garments of Nimrod. You see, he knew about the garments. There was no reason to take the guy's garments after you take his head off, right? He knew about the garments, and he took those garments. He knew the stories of it, okay? Which Nimrod's Abba had bequeathed to Nimrod, and with which Nimrod prevailed over the whole land, and he ran and concealed them in his house. So he took the powers that Nimrod had to make him a mighty one, right? And he took those garments, and Esau took those garments and ran into the city on account of Nimrod's men. And he came to his Abba's house wearied and exhausted from fight. And he was ready to die through grief when he approached his brother Yaacob and sat before him. And he said to his brother Yaacob, Behold, shall I die this yom? And why then do I die? And Esau took those garments and ran into the city on account of Nimrod's men, and he came to his Abba's house wearied and exhausted from fight, and he was ready to die through grief. And he approached his brother Yaacob and sat before him, and he said to his brother Yaacob, Behold, I shall die this yom, and why then do I want this becker? And Yaacob acted wisely with Esau in this matter, and Esau sold his becker to Yaacob. Esau took the garments and skins of Nimrod's father, stole from Noah, from Adam, and he took them, but he was wearied, exhausted from the fight of all these battles, and running, and this is when Yaakov took the birthright. That's right. This is when he took the birthright. So this concludes this part series of Abram to Abraham's journey from birth to death, and a little bit of stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaacob, and Esau, all right? And a little bit of that story of what went on suddenly there. Anyways, I close this portion. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. This has been a great 5-part series. This became a great series of teaching. Thank you for being patient and listening to it. If you could get the book of Sefer Yasher, read it yourself, study it, and see the in between the lines stories as a parallel with Bereshit, it really magnifies and brings out to open. So now you know why he was weary near death in verse 12, chapter 27. And he sold his birthright. He said it out of his mouth. And Yaakov took advantage of it. All right? And he was a mighty man. And then he had the skins too. I mean, he's a double portion mighty man. Okay, so I close with this. Be barakot. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. In the Shem of Yahuwah and his man, Yahushua Mashiach. Amen. Amen.